I It has been 3 months, well, just under 3 months since I quit my job and moved out of the United States to Tobago. And I am going to tell you how I feel about the decision I made so far. So it was March 10th that I got on a plane and came to Tobago after packing up all of my most valuable, well, not necessarily most valuable, but most needed things, and had them shipped here to the island of Tobago, which is in the country of Trinidad and Tobago. And so far, so good. I love it here. I am happy and I'm living the life that I've always wanted. And the thing about it is, I feel like I made the right decision because of the fact that I was at 56 years old. I didn't have really a significant retirement account. My original plan was to retire when my husband retired and move to Mexico where it's cheaper to live. But, you know, life happened and we ended up splitting, and then I'm on my own. So what I was facing was taking my little salary, which, you know, depending on where you are, was significant. But in Washington, D.C., $101,000 ain't shit. But maybe in other parts of the country it would have been great. But there, it's like it wasn't that much to begin with. But then with inflation, my spending power with it probably would put me back, especially after all the taxes taken out. I would be like making $60,000 or $70,000, and it's just not enough. I would probably have to live in a little tiny apartment condo. Maybe I could eke out a nice living. I'm not saying that it couldn't be done, but that isn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to retire and move to Mexico and live close to a beach and just work on my business, because technically I wasn't going to retire. I was just going to work on my own remote businesses and make money that way, which doesn't require a lot of physical, work. It's just mostly, it's brain work. It's on my laptop computer. So cool. That's what I was going to do. So when that plan went out the window, I started looking at the amount of money that I had in retirement, which was absolutely impossible for an actual retirement. There's no way that I would be able to do what the traditional people used to do, which was, when they hit 65 or now, 67 or something like that, quit your job, and then you have this pension coming in every single month that sustains you for the rest of your life. And with healthcare, that's key too, no healthcare. So I was like, okay, I did have some money in retirement, so I decided to cash it out, not all of it, but cash out some of it to give myself a little 2 to 3 year cushion to get my businesses up and running. The thing about it is, it would be much more difficult to get these businesses running in the US because I would need so much more money to live off of that I don't need here where I am. Now, granted, Trinidad and Tobago is not an inexpensive country. It's not cheap. Like people say, move to Thailand or Cambodia or someplace like that. It's not. It's not cheap to live here. However, it is less expensive than most parts of the United States. Maybe not Mississippi, but guess who ain't never moved to Mississippi? So, definitely less expensive than Washington, D.C., New York, California. Any place that I would actually want to live in is definitely less expensive than that. So I cashed out that much money. I still have a little bit left, not enough to retire on, but enough to invest. And here I am. And so far, so good. I'm working on the businesses. Things are moving forward. I'm not making significant money just yet, but that does take time, and I already knew that. That's why I came here with a cushion, and I have benchmarks to make sure that I don't just run through the money and then be just out, because if that were to happen, I'm not sure exactly what I would do. I can't go back to the US, especially because it costs so much more to live there than to live here. And also there's the immigration thing, because I'm technically still a resident of the US because it takes 5 years to get residency here in Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm not eligible to even start that process until 5 years. So what happens now is basically I technically have a tourist visa. I can come in and stay for 90 days and then leave. So I'm almost up on my 90-day deadline, and I am going back to the U.S. just because I really didn't pack properly when I left. I just kind of threw everything in boxes and left, and I left things that I really wanted, and then I needed to come here to find out some things that I may not need and some things that I would need. Excuse the noise. There's construction next door, but anyway, so I'm going back because I need to tie up loose ends. But after that, I don't plan on going back every single 90 days. I do plan on requesting waivers from immigration, which requires you to just send an email to them, basically letting them know that you're not being an illegal alien and overstaying your visa. Letting them know I'm here, I would like to stay for an additional 30 days or 90 days or whatever. And usually from what people I know who've done this before, they usually say yes, because as long as you're sustaining yourself, you're not breaking the law, you're good. So that is the plan. And so one of the things I wanted to talk about is, doing this, a lot of my friends and family back in the US think that I'm just living in the lap of luxury. While yes, this is paradise to me, but I'm not exactly living in luxury, okay? So let me explain. The house that I left in Washington, D.C. was fairly recently remodeled, 3-story townhouse with 3 levels, but 2 units. So the downstairs unit was an apartment all by itself, which we used for Airbnb, which we're still using for Airbnb, and I'm still helping to run that because it helps to pay that mortgage. So, and then the upper 2 levels, and it's a very nice place. And I come here to Trinidad and Tobago, and while it is very nice, there's a lot of differences. And I think this is kind of the beauty of leaving the United States, being able to experience a different culture, a different way of life, and just things that are just different. For example, the houses. Okay. Now I got lucky. I got a house. I'm living in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. And, I had expected to live in an apartment, but I got lucky and found this place that had been, vacant for, I think, a whole year. And we just came at the right time. And it was just kind of like an accident, a happy accident that I even found it in the first place, because we were in a temporary place and something happened and we had to, prepare to leave there earlier than we had planned. And then, so I started looking in places that I hadn't been looking in the past. And I just saw this place and I thought, well, let me just check it out. Well, come to find out, this place is literally an 8-minute walk to one of the most beautiful beaches in the world, Buku Bay. And that makes me so happy. Even though like some places had a view, I don't have a view of the beach, but I can actually get there in 8 minutes. The same amount of time it took me to walk from my DC townhouse to the Metro Rail station. So that's great. At any given day, I can just decide to go over there. In fact, I would be out there. People think, well, why aren't you out on the beach every single day? I'm not on the beach every single day because that sunshine, that Caribbean sunshine. I'm protecting my skin as much as I can, wearing hats, have some long sleeve. I need to go back and get some more of my long sleeve athletic shirts that let the air come through, but they're long sleeve to protect you from the sun, because you see things with the UV, what do you call it? The UV range or whatever that you see in the weather. It really goes up to 10, but here in Trinidad and Tobago, close to the equator, it goes up to 12 plus. So my little northern ass can't really handle, sunburn. I got sunburned once since I've been here, and it's not funny. Sunburn, every time you get sunburn, even before you get sunburn, suntan is actually some damage. So I'm trying to prevent all of that. So it's the middle of the day right now. My ass is not on the beach. I tend to get up early in the morning and, take a little dip, or go in the evening as the sun is going down. And so that's one thing. I'm not laying out on the beach all day, having a good time, or swimming in the water all day. But, I get to do a fair amount. This past weekend, there was an event at the way other end of the island. It was a diving event, and it was outside, and I got plenty sun. So even though I've got SPF 100, you would think that with all this melanin I'd be protected, but don't. It's not true. We get burnt. So anyway, that's just one thing. So the sun is so hot, you have to kind of be careful, make sure you don't get sunburned. And it's funny because the people here, no matter what, color they are, they really don't wear sunscreen. And I'm just like, what the hell? I don't understand how you run out the door with no sunscreen. I'm coating myself with SPF 100 and I end up sunburned and you not. I don't know. So anyway, that's the first thing. The second thing, in the way houses are built here are such that you're kind of like living a sort of outdoor life. Like this, there's holes in the wall in the living room. Okay. None of the windows here have screens. They just open and you just wide open. And I don't know if you just saw, the door is open because I need air because otherwise I'm gonna die. So basically the bedrooms are air conditioned. They have those air conditioning units that are at the top that are individual to each room. But the main living area here and in many places is not air conditioned, so it's open. And I have a little half a door over there. I can turn the camera so you can see that kitchen door. So half of that door is open, and then we have that door, and I have a window behind me that's open. Now the interesting thing about it is all this openness, no screens. The house is not full of flies. It seems like in the US, whenever you open the door for 2 seconds, 100 flies fly in, and there's no flies in here. Sometimes mosquitoes will come, but generally there's no bugs flying in the doors. I don't know what that is about, but that's a good thing. So, I had to get used to being in here in the living room where it's kind of warm. I mean, I could go in the bedroom, but I don't want to stay in the bedroom all day. So there's that. Another thing is the way that the water is. Now, I don't think this is countrywide, but in this particular area where I am, we have our water supply is connected to the city, which, by the way, just like in DC, is called WASA. And it's also connected to a tank. And right now we're in a drought. And last week there was a situation where the city water was just off. Usually what happens is during the day, during certain times, the water pressure goes way down. And then there's a switch on the wall that we just flip that switches to a pump that pumps water from the tank, okay? So in the daytime, when it's low water, we just flip the tank and then there's plenty of water. You can take a shower, wash dishes, do whatever you need to do. But because we're in a drought right now, and they're shifting water supplies from place to place, like they might turn off our water for a day or two to supply another town, or, well, not town, village. These are villages. That's a whole nother thing I'll tell you about. So last week, the tap went dry. And so I turned on the pump and I was able to get some water. But then the tank went dry. So there was none. And then from time to time, there would be a small trickle of water from the city. So we were starting to fill up containers just so that we have drinking water, so that wasn't a problem, but just so we could have water for other things. Fortunately, that didn't last too long, but that's a reality that I have to deal with. We have to conserve water and also be mindful that there may be times when the tap is dry, and we have to be prepared for that. Another thing that that is interesting is that there's no hot and cold water. When you rent a place, you have to look and see if it says hot and cold, because most places don't have hot and cold. In fact, if you look at my kitchen faucet, it's only on and off. The bathroom faucet's on and off. Now, fortunately though, there's this heater thingy that can be installed in the shower. We had one here. We ended up replacing it because it was kind of old and didn't work that well. But it's kind of a scary looking thing because it's connected to electricity inside the shower. But that is a water heater. So there's a switch right outside the bedroom, and you flip that switch on if you want warm water. And that water is never going to be hot unless it's a really hot day and the sun is blazing and the water that's outside in the tubes is being exposed to that heat. When you turn it on, that can be hot enough to burn. But other than that, it's a little bit warmer than lukewarm. It's never going to be hot. You're never going to have a nice steamy shower. But when you live in a hot ass country, do you really want a steamy ass shower? Nah, I don't. But I also don't like cold showers either. So it's really interesting how, I had to adapt to not having hot water, had to adapt to not having water at all sometimes, had to adapt to not having an entire air-conditioned house, which really wasn't that bad because I prefer open windows and doors. And I will, even when I was back in DC, I would keep the doors and windows open until in the summer, until it's just too hot and I can't do it, or in the winter when it's just too cold and I can't do it. But now there's really not a choice. And the good thing is that we live so close to the sea that there's usually a nice breeze that comes through. It's not a cool breeze, but at least you won't suffocate and die. So those are the things. And, besides that, we live on so I'm, in case you didn't realize, I'm living amongst locals. I don't live in this expat community, which is not what I wanted in the first place. I never wanted to live in a place full of Americans and Europeans because, I wanted to live with the locals. And it's so nice because people here in Buku, my village of Buku, are very friendly, and everybody says hi to you when they pass you on the street. They say morning, morning, or they say, in the evening, they say good night, which in the beginning confused me because good night means goodbye. Where I come from. So good night means, it could mean hi and it's nighttime. So that's cool. And so, there's a lot of little quirky things about living here, but none of them are deal breakers. These are things that I'm willing to endure, to be able to live the life that I am living, to be able to live what I feel is luxury. Everybody doesn't feel this way. Like some people people that I know might come here and be like, I can't live with this situation. But this is what I have to do because I'm never going to have $2 million, $3 million, $5 million to be able to live on some nice oceanfront in the type of housing that I lived in before in DC. That's just never, ever, ever going to happen. So this is the way that I managed to have it happen. So be it. I'm getting used to it. It's really nice. But overall, I am very grateful that I had this opportunity to do this because I was looking at my retirement prospects and it was just very, very sad looking because it looked like I was never, ever going to be able to retire based on, basically I feel like retirement overall at this point is mostly a scam. Because unless you make quite a lot of money, like beyond, upper middle class, nobody really has the ability to save enough money to replace what used to be a pension, which meant you could just live the rest of your life in the same quality of life that you had while you were working and, and be okay. That just isn't, a lot of people decide that they want to downsize. They want to move out of their big house, which makes sense for some people. Move out of your big old house and get into a smaller little condo or something because all that space is not necessary because you don't have kids and you may not have, the needs that you used to. But to me, that's not the case. That's not the issue. I didn't want to downsize because downsize meant down quality. And if I'm going down quality, I'm going to up the quality of somewhere else. So that's what this has been able to do for me. And I just had no hope that I was actually going to be able to, like right now I'm 56. And say I wanted to retire at 66. Between 56 and 66, was I going to have $1 million? Was I going to have $500,000? No. I don't think I would have $200,000. So what was I supposed to do with that little bit of money? And I feel like I value time and health a lot. Without time and health, you really don't have anything. So although I don't have a lot of dollars, I have my health. I have no health issues. I had a physical before I left to make sure because I had to give up my health insurance. But the good thing is I do have access to health care here. So that's a good thing. But between time you can't get it back. It's a non-renewable resource. And health is too. Once your health is gone, I mean, you can regain it, but it's difficult. So I decided to do this because I'm healthy enough, and there's enough time for me to do things, and I think that was the right decision. And am I here trying to tell everybody to quit their job and move to another country? Absolutely not. What my message is to open your eyes and look at the actual reality outside of what everyone else tells you. Because when I was getting ready to do this move, there was a whole lot of yang going on with, oh my God, how you gonna do that? You know, trying to scare me to death. Like, you don't have this and you don't have that. But the truth is, when you really look at it, if I just clear out all the noise, the gamble to come here and live a better life was easier than the gamble to stay there and work an additional 10 years and then possibly have to work an additional 20 years, which I definitely did not want to happen. I didn't want to be 75, 85 years old, still working at somebody's office. That just wasn't for me. Now, granted, you know, for some people it's fine because it's, you know, sitting down work, it's in an office, is not very strenuous. But to me, it's still not great because it's sedentary. And so sometimes sedentary work can be just as bad as strenuous work. So I decided that I don't want to do any of that. And so I came here, and just the reminder is that I didn't just, you know, come here to the land of milk and honey. There has been some trade-offs, but these trade-offs have been very much worth it for me. And I am enjoying my life in Tobago, and I probably will see you in a couple of weeks when I get back to the US. I probably make a video. I planned on spending about just under 5 weeks back in the US. And then I started thinking about it, and you know, I had to drop off someone at the airport the other day, and I started dreading. I just like looking at the airport like, oh God, I don't even want to come here. I just want to stay here. And so I reduced it. I changed my ticket and made it not until next week. So I'll be staying just 3 weeks in the US, and I think that's much more manageable. But I don't have any regrets. I am very happy with this, and I'm still moving forward. There are things that I still want to accomplish here, things that I want to improve. But for now, things are good. Until next time.